Peter Parker, the Spider-Man, is accidentally transported to another universe. On this parallel Earth, he discovers that this version of Peter Parker was a teenage Spider-Man who tragically died in a brutal fight against a group of supervillains. Moved by the fallen hero's sacrifice, a young boy named Miles Morales has stepped up to carry on Spider-Man's legacy. Still unsure whether what he's seeing is real or just some illusion, Peter decides to visit this world's Peter Parker's home to find out the truth. Spider-Man swings to the place that used to be home, the house of Peter Parker. The Parker house stands silent with a large red "For Sale" sign in the yard. Time has moved on without him. On the porch, Aunt May and Gwen Stacy step outside. May gently reminds Gwen about her homework, but Gwen sighs, saying she did most of it, not all. She was halfway down the steps when she froze mid-sentence. Both she and May looked up, and standing on the lawn was Spider-Man. The street goes silent, neighbors turn. Aunt May's grief turns to anger as she shouts at him to get out, calling him a lunatic. Gwen reaches for her phone, ready to call the police. But Spider doesn't move. Slowly, with shaking hands, he pulls off his mask, and underneath, it's him. The same face they lost. The same boy they buried, just older. Tears run down his cheeks as he looks at them. Aunt May's anger vanished, replaced by shock, her voice caught in her throat. Gwen's eyes widen as they stared at him in disbelief. Aunt May and Gwen Stacy can't even process what they're seeing. Peter smiles. "Aunt May, and you, oh man, you're Gwen Stacy. You're so young." This man looks exactly like their Peter Parker. He's older, tired, but undeniably him. Before he can explain, Aunt May walks right up and slaps him across the face. Before he can say anything, Gwen launches forward, furious, kicking and yelling at him. She calls him a freak, accusing him of finding joy in tormenting them. "Do you have a soul? Do you even have a reason to live?" she shouts. But Peter doesn't fight back. He catches her wrist mid-swing, and just then another voice shouts from behind them, "Wait! Don't!" Miles Morales bursts onto the scene, his voice breaking as he throws himself between them. Hey, whoa, stop!" he shouts, hands up in peace. Gwen turns on him, fuming, demanding to know what he's doing there. Miles hesitates, struggling to speak before whispering, It's him." Gwen's face twists in confusion. What the hell does that even mean? The older Spider-Man steps back, guilt consuming him. He admits he shouldn't have come, that he didn't think he'd actually see them, didn't even know what he was hoping for. He says he can't understand how there's this entire other world where he's dead and they're still here. "I'm sorry I came here. You don't deserve this on any level. I'm really sorry." The weight of the words hangs heavy. Aunt May's knees buckle. She sways, her lips part, and she collapses. Gwen catches her just before she hits the ground. Gwen calls MJ, who answers casually, not realizing what's coming. Gwen tries to explain, hesitating with every word. "It's one of those things," she says nervously. MJ, confused, asks, "What things?" Gwen said it was one of those complicated situations. Something that would feel mean whether she shared it or not. She explained that if there was any chance MJ might never find out about it, she wouldn't have said a word. She continues, "But I kind of feel like you will find out about this and you would want me to, well, I'd want you to tell me." MJ interrupted, confused and impatient, asking what Gwen was even talking about. Later, Aunt May slowly regained consciousness. From upstairs came the sound of voices, Miles, Gwen, and the older Peter, talking about how Peter's mind had once ended up in Wolverine's body and Wolverine's in Peter's. He was some kind of X-Men situation. Miles said he'd only been a superhero for a few minutes and already wanted to know how to prevent something that insane from ever happening to him. Aunt May pushed herself up and began walking upstairs, following the voices. When she reached the top, she froze. There, in the middle, sat Peter Parker, older, alive, and very real. Gwen was in mid-conversation, telling Miles that he'd have to call the X-Men if he wanted real answers. Miles says, "I didn't know people could switch brains. That's freaky." Peter then said that after everything he'd seen today, nothing in the world could be called freaky anymore. Aunt May stood there, silent and trembling, trying to convince herself she wasn't dreaming. Miles was completely absorbed in the web shooters. He couldn't believe Peter had built these himself. Peter watched him for a moment before looking at Gwen and asking if she actually lived here now, with Aunt May. Gwen nodded. She explained that after her father died and her mother left, May and the other Peter had taken her in. Peter, amazed, says, "Wow, it's just amazing, the differences." Gwen smiled, curious now, and asked if there was a version of her in his world. Peter said yes. She leaned forward, grinning, and asked if that version of her was cool. Peter admitted she was insanely cool, but older, about his age. Gwen laughed a little, both flattered and awkward. Then, with a teasing look, she asked if she could ask something without sounding weird. "Are you dating her?" Peter answers, "You didn't let me answer if you could ask me something without sounding weird, and it's a whole thing." Gwen sighed, realizing the truth. She gave him a look that said she already knew the answer. He was dating Mary Jane. Peter caught off guard and asked if there was an MJ here too. Gwen told him that yes, there was an MJ in this world, and that she had already called her. Peter's eyes widened a little. He asked if this world's MJ was her age, and Gwen nodded. He muttered, "Yikes." Then he asked if MJ was a model yet. Gwen blinked, confused, not expecting that question at all. Peter explained that in his world, MJ had become a supermodel. Gwen's expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief. "Supermodel? Are you kidding me? A supermodel with red hair and glasses?" Peter answered that she wore contacts now. Gwen shook her head in frustration. "She gets to be a model? What am I then?" Peter gets quiet for a moment and says that maybe they shouldn't be talking about all this. That's when Aunt May stepped in. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she stared at Peter. He turned to her. "Hey, are you okay?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, frozen in shock, staring at his face. Gwen rushed toward Aunt May. She tried to explain everything at once. She told her that there were other worlds, entire universes stacked beside their own, and that in one of them, another Peter Parker existed. He was standing right here, alive, breathing. This is really him. But May, still pale and shaken, couldn't bring herself to believe it. She stammered, saying that they didn't really know for sure. Gwen insisted, repeating that it was him. Miles, still fiddling with the web shooters, chimed in too. "It's him." May then asked Peter, "And you live here now?" Peter told them that he didn't belong here, and he wasn't supposed to be in this world and he had to get back. He explained that he had come here by accident. Aunt May reached out with a shaky hand and touched his arm, like she needed to feel that he was real. She said she didn't understand any of this. Peter tried to explain the best he could. He told her about Mysterio, the man responsible. Gwen recognized the name instantly. She called him the crazy guy from YouTube. Peter explained that Mysterio had torn a hole between worlds, breaking the wall between his universe and theirs. Miles wondered aloud if there was another version of himself in Peter's world. Peter tells him, "Yeah, maybe. I don't know. And all of you, I am so sorry I just showed up here like this. If I gave it 2 seconds thought, I never would have. I just needed to see, you know?" Aunt May looked at him closely and asked him if there was a version of her where he came from. Peter nodded, saying that there was. That she raised him along with Uncle Ben. That answer stopped her cold. She hesitated, then asked if Ben was still alive there too. He told her no, not anymore. But even after all this time, Uncle Ben was the reason he did what he did. When Peter first got his powers, he could have saved him, but he didn't. It was his fault and he had carried that pain ever since. Now every time he put the mask back on, every time he swung out into danger, it was because he knew what Uncle Ben would have done and he was trying to honor that. And then he says, with great power, Aunt May finishes the sentence through tears, comes great responsibility. And that's all it took. She gasped softly. "Oh my God, it is you. Look at you." Aunt May wrapped her arms around Peter, holding him tightly as tears streamed down her face. Peter held her just as close. Across the room, Miles stood still, watching them with wide eyes, his heart heavy. Aunt May, still crying but smiling through it, said that they had lost him, that he was gone and that they never got the chance to say goodbye. But now, here he was, grown up, alive, standing in front of her. Peter apologized, but Aunt May only smiled through the tears. She told him he was okay now. that he was here and that was enough. Peter then asked if the other Peter, the one from this world, had told her who he was before he died. Aunt May nodded, and from the side Gwen spoke up, saying that they'd known for a while. Peter asked if the world knew too, but Gwen shook her head. No, everyone found out about you after. You know, just us. And MJ, and Norman Osborn. Hearing that name made Peter tense immediately. He repeated, Osborn. Gwen then added one more name. Kitty Pryde. Peter blinked, confused for a second, asking almost instinctively, Kitty Pryde? Gwen said that he and Kitty were a whole thing. Peter's eyes widened in surprise as he repeated the name, realizing who she meant. Kitty Pryde of the X-Men. Gwen nodded, confirming it. Kitty Pryde of the X-Men. Peter blinked in disbelief and he repeated the words again. The X-Men. Gwen nodded once more, adding, Yep. He asked if they were dating, and Gwen said, Oh yeah. He said that now he had a million more questions, and Gwen immediately shot back that she probably had more. Then, turning to Aunt May, she laughed, saying Peter told them that MJ turns into a supermodel in his world. As the two of them bantered, Miles stood quietly by the window, something catching his attention outside. The sound of an approaching vehicle. He peered through the glass and spotted a black car with the shield emblem rolling toward the house. While Gwen kept talking, demanding that Peter explain himself, I mean, right now, right here, if you had to guess which one of us was, Miles interrupted, still looking out the window. Think we have to go now. Everyone made their way toward the front door. Nick Fury was already standing outside the door. Behind him were a few SHIELD agents, silent and waiting. Nick's tone was calm, but firm, as he said it was time to go now. Peter simply said, Yes, so. He stepped closer to Aunt May and told her he had changed his mind, that he was really glad they did this. Aunt May smiled, even through the tears, and pulled him into one more hug. When she let go, Peter turned to Gwen. I like this thing with you here like this. Take care of her. Gwen smiled, playfully bumping his arm with her fist and saying, Done. Before he could respond, she stepped forward and hugged him tightly, holding on like she didn't want to let go. Peter and Miles stepped out of the house into the daylight. Nick turned to Miles, telling him it was time to web up and get back to school. Miles blinked, pointing at himself in confusion. Me? He asked. Nick nodded, reminding him he was the only kid here. Miles hesitated and said that he'd actually like to stick around for a while. Nick sighed, muttering that things were already getting more complicated by the second. Before he could argue further, Peter spoke up. He said he'd like Miles to stay too, if that was okay. After a brief silence, Nick told Miles to get in the van. Miles froze for a second, clearly surprised by this. Just then, something caught Peter's attention. Across the street, behind a telephone pole, he saw her. MJ. She was watching him, half hidden. For a moment, the world around him seemed to stop. Peter's eyes widened and he took a small step forward, but before he could move again, she ran off down the street. For a moment, he wanted to chase her, to call out, to say something, anything that might make her stop. But before he could move, a voice stopped him. From inside the van, Nick Fury leaned out the window and said, It's time to go home. Peter froze where he stood. He looked in the direction MJ had disappeared. Then, after a brief pause, he turned back toward the van. Without a word, he climbed inside and took his seat. Miles then asked if there was a Nick Fury where Peter came from. Peter said that there was. Nick asked what he was like. Peter then said simply, white? Nick cracked a grin. Sorry to hear that. The van lifted off the ground, engines humming as it rose higher into the sky. Aunt May stood by the street with Gwen by her side, both watching as the van flew. Aunt May smiled faintly. She whispered to herself that she had made the right choices. Gwen glanced over, confused, asking what she meant. But May only shook her head, saying it was nothing. She didn't finish the sentence. Gwen smiled and reached over, holding her hand. Well, I'm writing a book. Aunt May smiled and waved her hand. Above them, the van ascended higher. Peter, sitting by the window, smiled and lifted a hand in a quiet wave. Peter kept watching until the house grew small beneath him. Nick watched him with a rare grin. It wasn't often he let emotion show. As the van disappeared into the sky, back on the ground, MJ sat alone. Hidden from sight, her knees pulled close, tears rolling down her face. She'd seen him. Not her Peter, but still him. The same eyes, the same heart. And just like that, he was gone again. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel.